There is a kind of love that never announces itself. It doesn't send flowers to the office. It doesn't post about you on a Sunday. It doesn't fill the room with its presence or demand to be noticed. It simply stays. It wakes up early so it doesn't disturb you. It remembers things you've forgotten you said. It watches you fall apart and doesn't flinch. And most people walk right past it because they were taught that love is supposed to be loud. But what if the quietest love is the deepest one? What is the person sitting beside you in silence, the one who doesn't always have the words, the one who shows up in small, undramatic ways? What if they are loving you at a depth that most people will never experience in their entire lives? That is what this is about. Not the love that performs, the love that stays. Let's start where almost no one starts, with your body. Not their words, not their gestures. When your partner has been with you long enough, when they have decided, somewhere below conscious thought, that you are safe, something extraordinary begins to happen inside them. Their nervous system changes. Not metaphorically, literally. There is a process called co-regulation. It happens in the autonomic nervous system, the part of the body that controls breathing, heart rate, and the baseline level of stress hormones circulating through the blood. When two people spend significant time together, and when one person has been filed by the other's body as safe, their physiological patterns begin to sync. Heart rates begin to mirror each other. Breathing falls into alignment. Cortisol, the stress hormone, drops together. This is not something they choose. This is not something they can fake. It happens at a level beneath language, beneath intention, beneath even awareness. What it means is this. Their body has been permanently reorganized around your presence. You are not just their partner. You are part of how they regulate being alive. And here is what makes that extraordinary. That designation is rare. The nervous system is not generous. It does not hand out the status of safe easily. Most people move through the world in a low-grade state of vigilance, always slightly braced, always faintly scanning for threat. To have a person, one person, that completely disarms that system, that causes the body to lower every defense it has ever built, that is not a small thing. That is one of the most significant biological events a human being can experience. It goes even further than that. There is a structure in the brain called the amygdala. It is, in the most basic terms, the brain's alarm system. It processes threat. It is the part of you that flinches before you know why, that wakes you at 3 a.m. with a racing heart, that turns ordinary social situations into something that feels faintly dangerous. Brain imaging studies, real fMRI scans where researchers watch the brain in real time, show that when a person is in the presence of a securely trusted partner, amygdala activity measurably decreases. The alarm quiets. The brain, essentially, stands down. Think about what that means for someone who has spent years with their alarm running constantly. Someone who grew up in a home where the adults were unpredictable. Someone who was hurt by people they loved. Someone who learned, early and thoroughly, that safety was conditional. When that person's amygdala goes quiet in your presence, they are not just comfortable. They have done something their nervous system may have never done before. They have decided at the deepest biological level that you are not a threat. And they are loving you from inside that rare, fragile, extraordinary state of having finally let their guard down. There is one more piece of the biology worth sitting with. Oxytocin, the hormone most associated with love and bonding, behaves very differently in a long-term partnership than it does in early attraction. In the beginning, it floods, it spikes, it creates that overwhelming, intoxicating feeling of new love. But over time, in couples who are securely attached, oxytocin stops spiking and begins to flow as a constant background level. Not a flood, a hum, a persistent low-grade warmth that runs beneath everything, beneath the arguments, beneath the Tuesday evenings, beneath the 10,000th shared meal. The neuroscientist's clinical term for it would not do it justice. What it actually is, in human terms, is this. Their body treats your existence as home. Now let's talk about why some people love in silence, because this matters enormously, and most people get it completely wrong. If your partner doesn't say much, if they show love through actions rather than declarations, if they seem to pull back precisely when you want them to step forward and speak, it is very easy to read that as distance, as withholding, as not enough. But psychology has a different interpretation, and it is one that should change everything about how you see them. People who love quietly often learned at a very young age that expressing love was not safe. Maybe they grew up in a family where vulnerability was met with ridicule. Maybe they told someone they loved them, and that person used it against them. Maybe they watched the adults in their life treat emotional expression as weakness, as ammunition, as something to be ashamed of. So they learned to carry love internally, to feel it fully and show it carefully, to protect the most precious thing in them by keeping it quiet. When that person, with all of that history, all of those learned defenses, all of that very reasonable fear, when that person chooses to love you openly, even in their quiet way, even through their small consistent acts, they are not doing less than someone who writes love letters. They are doing more. Because they are reaching across decades of their own learned self-protection to get to you. Every time they stay, they are overriding something in themselves that was built specifically to prevent this. And here is the part that will catch you off guard. Research shows that the people who most underexpress love are often the ones who are most consumed by it. They monitor closely. They notice everything. They track the small shifts in your mood with a sensitivity that would astonish you if you could see it. The quiet ones are not checked out. They are paying the most attention. They are just terrified that if they say too much, you will leave. Because that is what happened before. There is another dimension of this that psychology calls companionate solitude. It sounds clinical, but what it describes is deeply human. The capacity to be with someone, in silence, without needing to fill the space. To sit in the same room, each doing your own thing, and feel completely at ease. This might seem like a small thing. It is not. Research on long-term couples studied over 20 and 30 years, found that the ability to share comfortable silence was one of the most reliable predictors of lasting relationship satisfaction. The couples who needed to constantly entertain each other, who couldn't tolerate quiet between them, rarely lasted. The ones who could sit together and say nothing, and feel full rather than empty, those were the ones who made it. Your partner's silence is not absence. It may be the deepest presence they know how to offer. There is a philosopher, Erich Fromm, who spent his career studying love, and who arrived at a conclusion that most people find uncomfortable. He wrote that the majority of what passes for love in human relationships is actually performance. It is love displayed for the purpose of receiving something back. Approval, security, validation, a sense of being needed. It is love that requires an audience. Real love, what Fromm called mature love, is something else entirely. It doesn't need to be witnessed. It doesn't require applause. It persists even when no one is watching, even when it isn't acknowledged, even when it isn't returned in the exact form it was given. When your partner does something for you that you don't notice, moves quietly through the house so you can sleep, handles a problem before it reaches you, chooses not to tell you something that would worry you and can't be changed, they are not being secretive. They are practicing a form of love that is almost extinct. Love that asks for nothing in return. Love that doesn't keep score. Love that happens in the dark. Let's come down from the abstract and into something very specific, because the body tells the truth, even when the mouth says nothing. There is a detail in nonverbal psychology that most people overlook completely. Foot orientation. When a person is genuinely drawn towards someone, their feet, without any instruction from the conscious mind, tend to point in that direction. Faces can be arranged, hands can be managed, voices can be controlled, but the feet go where the body wants to go. If you pay attention, and I mean really pay attention over the course of weeks, to where your partner's feet are pointed when they're not thinking about it, you will find that they are pointing at you, more often than you expect, more often than they realize. Their body is oriented toward you, even when their eyes are somewhere else. Watch their breathing, the next time you sit close. Not consciously, not in a way they would notice, just observe. Because what research has found in deeply bonded pairs is respiratory synchrony, an unconscious alignment of breathing rhythm. Their lungs are following yours. Their body is tracking yours at a level they have absolutely no awareness of. This is not something you can decide to do. It is something that emerges spontaneously from prolonged, deep attunement. Their nervous system has learned the rhythm of yours, and it moves with you. And there is something even more subtle than that. Pupil dilation, the involuntary expansion of the dark part of the eye, is a response the brain produces when it encounters something it registers as rewarding. In the early days of attraction, this happens intensely and obviously. But here is what the research on long-term partners found. In people who remain genuinely in love, measurable pupil dilation persists at the sight of their partner's face, years, sometimes decades into the relationship. Not because it was decided, not because it was performed, because the brain has, at a completely unconscious level, never stopped marking that face as something worth responding to. Now let's talk about the things they do that you might not have named as love yet. They remember things you've forgotten you said. That comment you made in passing 6 months ago about a restaurant you wanted to try. The name of a coworker who was bothering you that they've never met. The specific way you like your tea when you're sick versus when you're just cold. This is not an accident, and it is not nothing. The brain preferentially encodes memories about people it has placed in the category of high emotional significance. What this means is that their attention to you is so elevated, so constant, that things you consider throwaway details are being filed away in them as important. You are important to them in their most basic, automatic cognitive processes. When they bring something back to you that you had completely forgotten, they are showing you, without knowing it, that you have been living in their mind at a level of detail that should take your breath away. There is something else, the information they've shared with you that they haven't shared with anyone else. Psychologists call it selective disclosure, the gradual, careful sharing of the parts of yourself you most need to protect. And here is what the research shows. Most people maintain a core, a true interior self that they share with no one, not their oldest friends, not their therapist. There are things about themselves, a shame, a wound, a secret truth, that they have never spoken out loud to another human being. When someone brings that thing to you, they are not just trusting you with a secret. They are placing the most structurally important, most carefully guarded part of their psychology in your hands. That designation does not come easily. It may have never come before. If someone has done that with you, you are holding something that has never been held. They don't try to fix you when you break. They stay. This might sound simple, but it is extraordinarily hard. The instinct most people have when someone they love is in pain is to solve it, to offer solutions, to reframe the problem, to find the silver lining. And that instinct is not cruelty. It comes from feeling helpless, and fixing is a way of managing that helplessness. But choosing not to fix, choosing instead to sit in someone's pain with them, to let it be exactly as bad as it is, to not rush it toward resolution, that requires overriding your own discomfort completely. It requires setting down your need to feel useful, your need for the situation to improve, your need for them to stop hurting, because watching them hurt is unbearable. When your partner does that, when they stay in the dark with you without turning on a light, they have done something for you that costs them enormously. There is something else about the ones who love in silence that is easy to miss entirely. They defend you when you are not in the room. Not to impress you, not because they know you'll find out, but because your worth has become part of how they see the world, not just how they see you in the moment. Social psychology research shows that most people modulate how they talk about their partner based on the audience. Who is asking? What that person thinks of their relationship? How the story of the relationship reflects on them? The person who speaks the same truth about you, whether you are present or absent. Who corrects someone else's mischaracterization of you without calculating what they'll get for it. That person has integrated you into their values, not just their feelings. You are not just someone they love. You are something they stand for. And notice the quiet way they restructure their life around yours. The sleep schedule that shifted when yours did. The meals that changed shape to accommodate what you need. The plans they quietly declined because they conflicted with something important to you. They never said, "Look what I'm giving up." They never made it a transaction. They just adjusted. An adjustment at the cost of personal comfort, done voluntarily and without announcement, is one of the most consistent behavioral markers of deep love that relationship psychology has ever documented. Trust, though. Let's go deeper into trust, because this is the word that carries everything. John Gottman spent 40 years, studying couples, watching them argue, listening to them talk, measuring their physiology, following them across decades to see who stayed together and who didn't. And what he found, stripped of all complexity, is this. Trust is not built in the dramatic moments. It is not built in the grand gestures, the airport reunions, the beautiful speeches. It is built in what he called turning toward. The thousands of small moments where someone reaches out, even slightly, and the other person turns in their direction rather than away. A look up from the phone, a hand placed briefly on a shoulder, a moment of attention given instead of withheld. These micro moments are almost invisible when they happen. They feel like nothing, but they accumulate over months and years and decades into something that becomes unshakable. And the extraordinary, humbling thing about your partner loving you through small, consistent, unremarkable acts is that they have been building this foundation, brick by brick, moment by moment, without you necessarily seeing it happening. Until one day you look up and realize the ground beneath you is absolutely solid. The deepest form of trust is one most people never talk about. It is the trust that allows for regression. When an adult, a fully formed, functional, autonomous adult, temporarily becomes small in the presence of their partner. Clingy, irrational, needy in ways that surprise even them. This is the nervous system doing something it almost never does. Deciding the environment is safe enough to lower every adult defense and return briefly to a more vulnerable state. The body only allows this when it has conducted at a level below consciousness a complete threat assessment, and concluded, I will not be abandoned here. I will not be mocked here. I will not be punished for needing something here. If your partner has ever become small with you, truly small, not performing smallness but actually allowing themselves to be uncertain, afraid, young in front of you, they have given you something they may have been unable to give anyone else in their adult life. They let you see them fail. Not the cleaned up version. Not the failure they've already processed and turned into a lesson with a tidy moral. The real-time failure. The humiliation that hasn't been reframed yet. The mistake they're still inside. The inadequacy they haven't found a way to make palatable. Most adults share failure carefully, only after the wound has healed enough to be shown. Your partner showing you the wound while it's still fresh is a declaration. I have decided that your love is strong enough to contain my worst moments. That you will not think less of me. That you will still be here when this is over. That is not a small decision to make about another person. That is one of the bravest decisions a human being can make. And notice this. Notice it carefully when they argue with you directly instead of going quiet and cold. Passive aggression, the silent treatment, the withdrawal of warmth, these are almost always expressions of distrust. They are what happens when someone believes that honesty will be punished, that their real feelings will be used against them, that direct confrontation will cost them too much. When your partner tells you they are angry, when they disagree with you openly, when they push back instead of going passive, they are showing you in the most counterintuitive way possible that they trust you completely. They believe the relationship can hold their truth. They are not managing you. They are treating you as someone who can handle them. That is a form of respect and trust that is far rarer than it should be. Here is what you may not realize you are receiving. Your immune system is stronger because of them. not as a metaphor, as measurable biology. Research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how the mind and relationships affect the body's immune function, has found that people in high-quality, secure long-term partnerships show greater antibody response to vaccines. Their wounds heal faster. Their inflammatory markers are lower. The sustained experience of feeling loved, of feeling safe, of having a person who has decided you are home. It changes what happens at the cellular level in your body. Love is not a feeling that lives in the chest and the throat. It is a biological condition that affects every system you have. And this one will restructure something in how you understand what they mean to you. Cognitive scientist Daniel Wegner gave us the concept of transactive memory. Here is what it describes. In a close, long-term partnership, people begin to distribute their memory between each other. You stop storing certain information in your own brain because you know your partner holds it. They know the login passwords. You know the birthdays. They know which mechanic you trust. You know the name of the doctor who helped them that one time. Without deciding to do this, without even noticing it's happening, you have built a shared cognitive architecture. A distributed system of memory that spans two people. What this means, the part that should stop you completely, is that losing them is not only an emotional loss. It is the loss of part of your own functioning cognitive self. They are not separate from you. They have become part of how you think, how you remember, how you navigate being a person in the world. Neuroscientist James Cohen spent years studying what happens in the brain when people are in physical pain while holding someone they trust. And what he found changed how researchers talk about love. Simply holding a trusted partner's hand reduced the neural pain response in the brain. Looking at their face had similar effects. The brain, when it registers a trusted partner, literally modulates pain signals differently. This is not comfort. This is not distraction. This is your brain rerouting its own threat response because it has registered that you are not alone. They are not just someone you love. They are part of your threat regulation system. They are part of how your brain decides whether the world is dangerous or safe. There is a concept in Japanese aesthetics. It is written with the character ma, and it is pronounced ma. It means the space between things, the pause, the gap, the silence that exists between notes in music, between words in a conversation, between people sitting together without speaking. In Japanese artistic and philosophical tradition, ma is not absence. It is a form of presence. The silence is not the absence of sound. It is the space in which sound becomes meaningful. The pause is not the absence of words. It is the place where what has already been said can settle into the body and become real. Your partner's silence is ma. The evenings when not much is said, but something important is being communicated. The moments when they don't tell you how they feel, but they turn towards you anyway. The years of small, undramatic loyalty that never made it into a conversation, but built everything beneath your feet. The choice to stay, repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a choice and became simply who they are. You were taught, probably, that love that doesn't announce itself might not be real. That if someone doesn't perform their love loudly enough, something might be missing. But what if the opposite is true? What if the love that doesn't need an audience is the only love that can truly be trusted? What if the person who stays quietly, who shows up without fanfare, who loves you in the spaces between things, what if they are the one who has gone furthest into you? The one whose body has reorganized itself around your presence. The one whose alarm system quiets when you walk in. The one who holds the parts of you that no one else has ever been allowed to hold. The quietest love is not the smallest love. It is the love that has gone the deepest. And if someone is loving you that way right now, if they are sitting beside you in the silence, if they are staying in ways that look ordinary from the outside, but are anything but, you don't need to say something grand. You don't need to match a performance that was never being performed. You just need to know what you have, and not mistake the silence for nothing, because it is everything.